In 2010, Pakistan enacted a legal update that split the architecture of the state. The 18th Amendment dismantled a concentrated federal power structure and fundamentally redistributed it across 4 separate, volatile provinces. To understand the magnitude of this shift, we are applying the analytical framework established by civil service instructor Sir Zohaib Anjum. The central question of his analysis, and a defining prompt for administrative examinations, is this: did the 18th Amendment successfully strengthen federalism, or did it expose deep governance and fiscal capacity gaps? Answering this requires holding 2 realities at once. We have to recognize a shift in constitutional law while diagnosing a failure of administrative execution. For decades before 2010, the Pakistani state operated under a model of intense centralization. Through successive military and quasi-military regimes, almost all significant policymaking was bottlenecked in Islamabad. The legal engine for this dominance was the concurrent legislative list. It dictated that on any shared subject, federal law would override provincial law. This legal override stripped political ownership away from regional populations. Over time, it generated historical grievances and political alienation, particularly in smaller provinces like Balochistan, Sindh, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The 18th Amendment was engineered specifically to bypass this bottleneck, legally shifting the weight of state power from the center to the provinces. The immediate legal action of the 2010 amendment was definitive. The concurrent legislative list was abolished. Instantly, legislative authority over education, health, culture, social welfare, and labor was severed from the federal government and handed directly to the provinces. This remains the largest single devolution of power in Pakistan's history, generating new political ownership among regional legislatures. To manage the resulting overlap, the amendment revitalized the Council of Common Interests. Under Articles 153 and 154, regular meetings of the Council became constitutionally mandated, transforming it into a structured forum for intergovernmental dispute resolution. On paper, the amendment completed its primary objective, re-establishing a federal architecture where the provinces operate with constitutional autonomy. But legal mandates do not automatically generate administrative capability. The provinces inherited massive regulatory and public service burdens, but lacked the technical and administrative machinery required to manage them. This chart illustrates a critical structural failure of the implementation. Devolution moved power from the federal center to the provinces, but it halted at the provincial capitals. It never reached the local governments. Leaving out the local tier created a vacuum. There was a disconnect between high-level policymaking in the capitals and grassroots service delivery on the streets. Without a strong center to enforce baseline rules, a secondary consequence emerged: the fragmentation of national standards. Benchmarks for health, education, and labor regulation became inconsistent across provincial borders due to the sudden absence of federal coordination. This visualizes how that uneven adaptation widened interprovincial inequality. States with entrenched bureaucracies, like Punjab, adapted quickly, while systems in smaller provinces stagnated. Internal bureaucratic friction also slowed the transition. Civil service cadres and judicial systems struggled with confusion over rules of business and newly redrawn jurisdictions. By failing to build the necessary local infrastructure, the execution of the amendment exposed administrative gaps at the provincial tier. That administrative failure was then amplified by a tandem macroeconomic catalyst, the 7th National Finance Commission, or NFC, award of 2009. Looking at the financial breakdown, the NFC award increased the provincial share of federal revenues to 57.5%. The immediate consequence was fiscal constriction. With less than half the revenue remaining, Islamabad struggled to fund sovereign debt servicing and national programs. Yet, despite receiving this influx of federal transfers, the provinces failed to mobilize their own internal revenue. They consistently underperformed in taxing local sectors, specifically agriculture, property, and services, leaving their own tax yields low. This structural deficit contributes to Pakistan's macroeconomic instability, creating friction with global creditors who demand balanced budgets. The result is an accountability vacuum. Overlapping responsibilities allow both the federal and provincial governments to shift blame for failing infrastructure and poor service delivery. Ultimately, this fiscal arrangement decentralized national expenditure without enforcing decentralized taxation. So, returning to our original assessment, did the 18th Amendment strengthen the Federation or expose its weaknesses? The legal record supports the constitutional argument. The amendment dismantled the mechanisms of over-centralization and formalized the role of the Council of Common Interests. But the administrative reality is that the execution exposed local government voids and triggered federal fiscal stress. The 18th Amendment provided the necessary legal scaffolding for a federal state, but that structure is now under strain from the weight of incomplete execution. Moving past this strain requires what analysts call second-generation reforms. This involves the devolution of political and financial power, all the way down to local, grassroots municipal governments. Next, provincial ministries require capacity building and technocratic enhancement to handle their vast new regulatory portfolios. Finally, provinces must expand their tax nets, specifically capturing agriculture and real estate, to pull their own weight and relieve the mounting fiscal pressure on Islamabad. The long-term stability of this federal system relies on aligning these constitutional ambitions with actual administrative and fiscal capability.